Welcome to Travel Talk with Joy. I'm Joy. I've traveled to all 50 states. I've been to all 7 continents. On most of my adventures, I do it with my husband, who's a full-time wheelchair user. Come meet amazing people who travel through life a little differently as we explore the world of accessible travel. Let's go! Welcome to Travel Talk with Joy. I'm Joy Bruns, and this is where I tell the story of the life of my up and down life with my husband, who has been in a wheelchair for 28 years. Thank you for watching. Today, I'm so excited because I have a great guest, but also I first want to talk about what's been going on in my life. So Bert and I, we have this deal where every other month we do date night, and 1 month I plan it, 1 month he plans it. So this month he planned for a really great date for me, and it was to a restaurant downtown. Usually his dates for me include like a multi-course menu, something crazy over the top with little teeny tiny foods, but you get like 82 of them. That's my date night. His date nights usually involve steak because that's what he likes. So we were on this date this week, and it was to a restaurant called Georgia Boy. It's in Virginia Highlands, which is a neighborhood in Atlanta, Georgia. Highly recommend. So we're there, and they had this special chef's table that he had booked, and he was so excited about this. So we have this little pre-experience where everyone sits around that's going to be at this table having cocktail together, and then they take us back to this room. And when we get to the room, they've done it perfectly in their mind. They had the high top table for the party, but then because they knew he was a wheelchair user, they had a low top table for the two of us. But it was interesting because the more we kind of thought about it, they were like, oh, we just had this really fun pregame with all these people and met these people. We don't want to have the wheelchair experience. We really want to have the experience that everyone else had, even though it wasn't the experience that was probably the best physically for him as far as, the right size table. So, it was just kind of one of those processes of saying, do we want to have the experience that's better physically because it's the proper place to eat at a proper table? Or is it better to eat at the table that's higher where, he kind of felt like he was shoving his food in this way. He didn't make a mess. But it really was the idea where he said, I think I just want to be at the table with everybody to hang out rather than having that table. And the restaurant was gracious. They switched everything around so we could all be at the table together. But I think that's one of those things with travel and with new experiences that we always kind of keep in mind of, is this the experience that we want? And it was such an incredible night. So I highly recommend go to Georgia Boy to get all the little teeny tiny foods that are just amazing. So anyway, that's what's been going on with us. But today I really wanted to introduce you guys to a guest that I got fascinated by because it just showed up on my Insta feed. I was watching this woman and she was traveling everywhere. And when I mean everywhere, I'm like everywhere. And, my friends always say like I'm the most traveled. Now this woman has me beat, like she has double my country count, just incredible. So I'm really excited to introduce everyone to Renee. And Renee Bruns, she lives in Atlanta, Georgia when she is in town. And so welcome, Renee. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here.
Yes, well, your content is incredible. So everyone make sure that you follow her because really unbelievable. Please share your Instagram right now.
My Instagram handle is Wheels Travels. Very simple, Wheels Travels.
Okay. Well, that leads you to my first question is, can you just tell us about your life journey that got you to be using a wheelchair and becoming Wheels Travels?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born 40 years ago. I'm 40 years old. So I was born 40 years ago in a very small town in rural Ohio. And I was born with a skeletal disorder. It's a type of skeletal dysplasia called multiple epiphyseal dysplasia. The name is not very relevant, but yes, long name, very fancy scientific name. But nonetheless, I started traveling when I was very young, outside of Ohio, just domestically traveling to places like Indiana. That was one of the first stops. And then to Baltimore and New York City. And, we started traveling all over the country, seeking out specialists and medical treatment. And 40 years ago, the internet wasn't in place. And so finding doctors was really just go and see who you can find. So I spent much of my youth traveling around because of my disability, seeking out doctors and treatment. And I really started falling in love with travel through all of that, which I call that the silver lining of my disability, because it really launched me onto this really great trajectory in my life. But when I started traveling, I realized how big the world is and how beautiful it is, and how much I wanted to see more of it. And I was a pretty ignorant little girl and didn't realize how big the world was. But in third grade, we were studying geography in school, and we're studying the United States geography. And I came home and told my mom, I want to see all of the 50 states someday, thinking that this was my life goal. I was going to see all 50 states. And without, I think, anyone in my family realizing it was happening, we started just traveling the country every summer. We would take a family trip, and we would go to a new state. So we would go to Kentucky or Tennessee, and then we'd start spreading further, and we'd get into Colorado. And by the time I was in my early 20s, my entire family and I had visited all 50 states. So, first of all, a huge life goal that very few people get to accomplish in the first place. And I just thought this was the coolest thing ever. But now I'm 22, 23 years old, thinking, well, I need to set another goal. So I started traveling internationally, and quietly set this goal for myself that I wanted to see all of the countries in the world someday. A little bit more of a stretch goal, if you will, a lot harder to achieve. But I started just traveling, when I had time off of work, and I was building a career. I was going to college, building a career, climbing through the ranks in corporate America, and having a great time doing that while traveling on my time off. So I had limited time off, about 2 or 3 weeks a year. I would travel, and I would always make sure I was doing an international trip. So I really started to rack up the country count, if you will, or the places that I visited. And then the pandemic came along, and I became very burnt out through that, and much the way most people did, and really wanted to have a shift in my life. So I left my corporate job in May of 2022, so 2 years ago, and I was just on one mission. I was going to go travel the world, and I was going to see how many places I could visit. I wanted to see new places. I had tried to convince my boyfriend of 10 years to come with me. He did not want to leave his career behind, shockingly. Couldn't find any family or friends that wanted to just stop their life for a year to go travel the world. So I said, I'm just going to do this by myself. If somebody wants to meet me along the way for a week or two, wonderful. And so I set out, I started off in Bali. And as I was doing research about solo travel, first of all, and then secondly, traveling with a wheelchair, I started to realize that the two had very little intersection. There weren't a lot of solo wheelchair users traveling the world. And so I thought to myself, I wonder if I can get a world record out of this. I feel like I'm the only person doing this. And so on a whim, not really thinking much would come of it, I sent a message to Guinness World Records. We exchanged some emails back and forth for a number of weeks, and landed on go out, see how many countries you can visit in 1 year. And if you can get any number above 40, we will give you a Guinness World Record. And so a year later, I had visited 66 countries and became a Guinness World Record holder.
That's incredible. So what is your actual record?
Actual record is 66 countries in 1 year. So that's the record for Guinness World Record. I have traveled to all, in my whole life, taking outside of that 1 year, all encompassing 129 countries.
That's incredible. So when you said, okay, I'm going to leave corporate America, was your family, were they like, what? Like, how did your family and friends react to this idea of, I want to do something non-traditional?
I think probably as you can expect, a lot of shock, a lot of, why don't you think on this for a few more weeks? Are you sure? What's your plan when you're done? I had a handful of friends, and my life partner, Tony, was very supportive, also saying, you've worked really hard. You've been saving your whole life to go travel at some point in time. Go ahead and do this. You will be fine when you come back. And so, I had a small group that was very supportive, but the bulk of the population just I don't think they really knew how to respond in full transparency. They wanted to be supportive, but I think there was a level of concern of, well, what does your future look like? And also, you're going out into the world as a solo female disabled traveler. There's some safety concerns there.
Absolutely, safety concerns. So, when you think about the challenges that you face, like initially, like that first year, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced?
Infrastructure, for sure. Infrastructure was definitely the hardest. I remember very clearly landing in Bali. That was my first stop, and I was going to go there for just a few weeks and just kind of, you know, grieve my past, if you will. And I shouldn't say grieve, that's a hard word, but kind of reset my frame of mind for the
Yeah.
next year. And I arrived, it was about 11 p.m. at night, and I got to my hotel, and the room that was reserved for me was on the second floor. Shouldn't be a problem. I saw an elevator, and they look at me and said, the elevator's broken. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm tired. I've traveled halfway around the world. I don't know the language. I need to stay calm, but I'm on a budget too. It's not just, okay, I'll just go to the next hotel and just throw some money at the problem. I have a very specific budget. I gave up my job. So navigating that just right off the get-go, I think I really told myself, and I remember very clearly in the moment saying, you need to stay calm. You need to trust that other people will help you and you will get through this. And so took a deep breath, told what I thought was very obvious. I can't walk up the stairs. I'm coming in with my wheelchair. I think this is quite obvious. And explain it's almost midnight at this point. What do I do? And the hotel staff was incredibly gracious. They made an accommodation and gave me a room on the ground floor. It was an upgraded room, which I was certainly not looking for an upgrade. I just wanted my basic room, but I couldn't get to it. So there's some beauty in that, but those types of situations happened ongoing, and it was a real lesson for me in learning to rely on other people for help and ask what I might think is obvious is maybe not so obvious to them.
Do you use a wheelchair full time?
I do, full time. Yes.
Okay. So when talking about 129 countries, I know this is a really hard thing to say, but what are your top 3 favorite countries that you visited? I know it's hard.
It's so hard, and it probably changes by the day. I love Cambodia, and I will tell you, Cambodia is not accessible at all. It is incredibly not accessible. It's a very poor country and very developing, and the economy just doesn't have the means to create the infrastructure that someone using a wheelchair needs. That being said, what I found the most beautiful about it is the people, and the fact that they were able to help me in a gracious, non-demeaning way, recognizing that, hey, our country doesn't have what you need, but I'm going to make up for it in my kindness, and I'm going to try to help you. And I don't even think it was a conscious thought. I think that's just how the people are there, and it's really, really beautiful. So I love Cambodia. And if you get the chance to go, I recommend it. I probably wouldn't go for an entire week because it is difficult to navigate and it will wear you down. But for a few days, it's beautiful. Another favorite country, I just got back from Botswana in Africa, and I did a safari there. The lodge that I was staying at was very accessible. They had ramps going up into the main lodge. The bathroom was accessible. So those places do exist. They're hard to get to. They're hard to find, but they do exist. And it was a really awe-inspiring moment for me to be able to be out in the nature with the animals and experience it firsthand. I think we often read and see pictures of that. So I'll put Botswana on the list probably because
Okay.
it's fresh in my mind right now.
Is that the one where you were climbing up the sand dunes, like crawling up the sand dunes?
Yes, and that was Namibia.
Talk about that. Come
Yeah,
on, that's
so
crazy.
yes, so Namibia is right next door to Botswana. So we actually, my sister and I were on this trip. We drove over from Botswana to Namibia, and there's a desert in Namibia with these giant sand dunes, and it's like this red sand, when the sun hits on it, and it's beautiful. And into this, I pictured, okay, we're going to get my chair out. She's going to haul me through the sand. Anybody that uses a wheelchair and has somebody
Oh
haul them
yeah.
through the sand, they know what that's like. It's painful. So, and I picture I'm going to sit at the bottom of this hill, and I'm going to get this beautiful picture, be grateful for what I have. And we get there, and I think, why can't I get up this hill? If I have to crawl, if I have to go on my butt, however I have to get up this sand dune, I want to put my feet and my hands in the sand. And so I just went for it. And there was sand everywhere. I think I still am pulling sand out of my shoes, but I went slowly. I was out of breath. It was a great workout, and I didn't get all the way to the top, but I got pretty far. And just to be able to be up there, and for me, just like that freedom of, I am out here doing this in Namibia, crawling on my butt in the sand, and it was awesome, really, really awesome.
Your sister crawled too.
Oh yeah, yeah. So
Yes,
she
I
was
love that.
she was standing behind me taking some videos and pictures, and I was, just crawling in it, getting all dirty. And I said, "Hey, Julie, why don't you try this?" And so she gets down on her hands and knees, and she's like, "You know what? It's not that bad." And we just kind of played like children. So I'm
Was
lucky
it
to have her.
hot? Was
It,
the sand hot?
it wasn't. It was warm to the touch, but it wasn't hot, and it was beautiful. A really great moment.
Wow. Okay, so give me the third country. I want it to be a country that is not in Africa, that you would say, wow, that was really accessible, surprisingly.
Portugal
Okay.
surprised me with their accessibility. It's very hilly because it's on the coast, but my experience, and I will caveat this with, every place I visit, I'm there for, a week, 2 weeks, sometimes less.
Yeah,
So experiences can be altered just simply by the people you happen to cross paths with, or the
absolutely.
weather. Did you sleep well that night? But in Portugal, I traveled with my life partner, and we found there to be elevators everywhere, accessible bathrooms, maybe not in all places, but enough that I felt like I could find a restroom if I was out in public, and that goes a long way. Um, he was there to help me, so it was a little bit different than being alone, but I felt it to be
Hmm.
surprisingly accessible.
Yeah, we went there also, and my husband's a full-time wheelchair user, and it was really surprisingly accessible too. I thought it was
Yeah.
a beautiful place, great people, and yeah, very accessible as well.
Yeah, I think it's in Portugal. It is in Portugal. In along the coast, there is a beach that has a boardwalk specifically designed for wheelchair users, and it goes off into very close to the water, and so you can get closer on. I think it's made of wood, so it's better than
Yeah.
sand.
Well, they have these new ones in Greece. Have you heard about the CTEC system?
Uh huh. Uh huh.
We haven't done it, but I'm so interested. Our friend Corey Lee, he just got back from a major Greece trip, and it was so cool. It's like a Zugspitz,
Uh
like
huh.
on the little cart, and it just takes you literally right into the water on a metal track. Like, this is so cool. It's a really interesting what people are doing to make beaches more accessible.
For sure, for sure. And I mean, just not even for wheelchair users, but anybody that has a
Yeah,
mobility issue, it's sand is hard for everyone. I think, I don't know. I've never had to walk in it, so I can't speak for everyone, but
it's
it
hard
looks
for me.
hard. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
No, it is hard. Yeah, I think it's great to see countries. People always say, "Oh, America's so accessible," and we are in so many ways.
for
But
sure.
there are some other countries around the world that are doing some really amazing things for accessibility.
They are. They are. It's really cool to see.
Yeah. Okay, so I have an unusual question. So you say you have a partner of 10 years, um, but my question is, as a wheelchair user, what country do you find men approach you most?
Interesting question. Most in a helpful way or in a,
Interested in you way. You're a beautiful woman who happens to use chair instead of walking.
uh
And
huh.
I'm just curious about how men perceive that in different countries. Um, yeah, what's your thoughts?
So I think I would say in Latin America, South America, the men are very drawn to me as an American. And I think for some men, the wheelchair is a bit of a deterrent maybe, or okay, we're not going to approach her. But for others, they simply do not care. And they're just, they're saying, you have blonde hair and blue eyes, and that's so different than what we have in our country. And we want to talk to you. I think that, to be honest, I think that's probably true around the world. That men around the world, there are some that see a wheelchair and say, no thanks, I'm not interested. I'm not even going to talk to you. And others that don't see it and they see the person inside.
Yeah,
It's a really thought provoking question.
yeah. I think it's interesting though, because I think men around the world in general are so different with, like I think Italians and Latins are so much more aggressive that I was just curious about the wheelchair, if you saw that as a difference also.
I think the only thing I would say is that there are some, and I think this is probably true around the world, some that see the wheelchair and say, I'm just not even going to go there.
Yeah,
But those that don't see it treat me exactly the same as they would my sister, for example.
absolutely. So, with traveling as a woman a lot on your own, have you ever had a situation where you felt your safety was compromised because you're a wheelchair user, not just because you're a woman?
I don't think I have ever truly felt at danger because of my wheelchair. I have my own internal fears. I have these I think one of the most scary moments for me, and this happens frequently. This happens in the United States too. So this isn't specific to traveling, but when I get into a taxi or an Uber or somebody else's car and I'm alone and they take my wheelchair from me and put it in the trunk, I'm really at their mercy. So they start driving, and this is true for an able-bodied person too. I don't know where they're going to take me, but I had a situation in Qatar once where this happened, and we were going the wrong way, and it was my fault, but we were going the wrong way, and I thought, okay, there's a stoplight up here. He can stop. I can't get out. I could roll out of the car. I mean, that's no, that I'm just laying in the street. So I think there is that moment of you take that mobility device away from me, and I am a sitting duck just waiting on.
Vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, I'm glad that that did not end in a bad
Yeah.
situation.
Knock on wood. I try to be very, very aware of my surroundings and be safe. Don't go out at dark time. Don't overdrink. Common sense things.
Absolutely. So take the flip of that. Are there any specific interactions with locals where you were like, wow, I can't believe the generosity or the kindness that that person just showed?
So many, so many.
I love that.
I mean, I'll try to think of some of the top ones. I visited Brazil with my sister. We went to the Amazon, and it was not very accessible, the Amazon River, as you can imagine. And the lodge that we were staying at hired a gentleman. His name was Paco, who had a really rough upbringing and a really difficult life, but they hired him specifically to take care of me. And when I say take care of me, I'm not saying, wave a fan in front of me when I'm hot or, go get my drink for me. Like piggybacking me up and down the riverbank and, carrying my wheelchair and, physical labor. And it's a difficult thing for me to navigate internally. Just the guilt of this is so this man just carrying me up and down this riverbank. He shouldn't have to do that, but nonetheless, his demeanor about doing it was incredible, and the fact that the lodge had the foresight to say let's just get her somebody to help her, and it was really really special.
That's
So
amazing.
there's one story. Do you want more? I can give you more.
I want another story. Yes, please.
In Morocco, this was years ago, a screw had come loose on my wheelchair on the front wheel
Hmm.
and going down the sidewalk, and the wheel just falls off and it goes kind of rolling
Oh my
into the
gosh.
street. And I mean, this is Morocco. There's no wheelchair supply stores around. I don't have extra screws with me. I have some wheelchair parts, but not an extra screw. But on the side of the street, there was a group of young men doing some construction. They saw this kind of all unfold, and they came over and attempted to put the screw on that had cracked, so that I couldn't screw the wheel back on. And not speaking any words of the same language, they managed to use hand signals and indicated, just wait, we're going to take a screw off of their motorcycle. I don't know where they got it from. They had maybe from the seat or something,
Yeah.
found a screw that would work and put the wheel back in. And again, they took this off of their motorcycle. They're on the job doing their work, and what's in this for them? But it worked, and I was able to use it that way for the next 10 days or so. And it was just really, really, amazing that these people kind of came out of the woodwork to help.
That's extreme kindness.
Yes, it is. It really, really is.
I'm sure when you've traveled so much, you do have multiple stories about that. But to me, it shows that, like, even when you're in a tough situation, that people show up because
Mm-hmm.
they want to help. I think there's goodness in 99% of the people are good and they want
Yeah.
to make things better for other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow. So how do you prepare for a trip in terms of researching accessibility, or do you just be like, I'll figure it out?
Some of both.
Okay.
I think when I went on my very first trip overseas, it was a cruise. I was doing a Mediterranean cruise with some friends, and I brought along a spare wheelchair. I brought medicines along. I had so much stuff, and I didn't end up using any of it. Over time, I started to be a little bit more realistic and realize, if the wheel falls off, I'll figure it out. Within reason. It's always good to have some extra supplies, and everyone has unique needs, so be cognizant of that. One of the things I do try to do is find accessible hotels, and that's it's just more comfortable to show up and know that I can get to my room when I'm tired and not have the stress of, okay, what am I going to do if this doesn't work? It doesn't always come easy. I think I know that the definition of accessible varies around the world and probably even within the United States some. So that comes with its own challenges, but I do try to communicate with hotels beforehand just to say, hey, is this room on the ground floor? Is this going to work for me? What, the specific needs that I have in it? That really gives me some comfort to know that at least I have a safe place to go should I be worn out at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Because this is a really important one for Wheel the World,
Mm-hmm.
because this is what we do is accessible hotels all over the world. And I agree with you, is like, at the end of the day, if you can at least know that you can get in your bed and maybe take a shower, maybe,
Mm-hmm. Maybe. Yeah.
maybe, but at
Use the
least get in the
toilet.
bed.
Yeah.
Yeah, use the toilet. Like, those are things that are kind of so important to everybody.
Yes. As a wheelchair user, having an accessible hotel room is one of the most valuable things that I can have when I'm traveling. So I try really, really hard to do my research beforehand, contact the hotel, make sure I understand what their definition of an accessible room is. For me, just knowing that I can get into the bed and use the toilet at the end of a long day is super, super helpful. I know Wheel the World is doing an incredible amount of work about having resources available specific to hotels and what needs they have. So I think for anyone that's traveling, having a safe place to go at the end of the day is really important. But especially as a wheelchair user, to know that you can get in, put your PJs on, go to the bathroom if you need to, and just take a breather is really, really helpful.
Absolutely. Have you had any medical emergencies while you've traveled?
I have been fortunate that I have not. I've had little bouts of food poisoning, but
Yeah,
nothing.
to be expected.
Yeah, nothing where I've needed to be in a hospital or anything. I knock on wood. It is one of my concerns. I buy travel insurance everywhere I go, and I try to be safe, but life does happen, and fortunately, I personally have not.
Excellent. Who do you use for travel insurance?
I use a company called Insured Nomads. It's a relatively new company. I came from the insurance world, so it's kind of a networking friends that knew each other before I started traveling. But I use Insured Nomads.
Okay. And as far as like specific things that you must take while you travel, do you have any, like, oh my gosh, I have to have this when I travel?
Passport, obviously,
Obviously.
cell phone and chargers. Um, those are probably the big things. Obviously, from a medical standpoint, everybody has their own unique medical needs. So, I think we could elaborate on that. That list could go on and on. But for me personally, I travel very lightly, and I've learned that I can wear the same clothes multiple times, and most people don't know or don't care. If they do, they're not telling me. So I travel very lightly, partially well, it's a couple of reasons, but the biggest reason is when I'm by myself, it's hard to navigate a wheelchair and luggage. So if I can get everything in a backpack, it's just easier. And so I try really, really hard to just pack lightly.
Everything in a backpack.
I try. Yes, I try.
Incredible.
Yeah, I try.
Love it. So, traveling to so many places, how do you feel that's really impacted you just as far as your view on life and people?
On life, I am so much more confident with myself since I left 2 years ago. I think when you're out in the world, especially by yourself, and I think this applies to anybody, but especially when you have unique challenges, going out and knowing that I was the only one making these decisions about where to go, where to eat, what hotel to go into, what flight to take, everything that goes into it is completely mine. And so when you start to see that it's working, it's like, wow, I can like trust myself. I'm actually capable of doing this. And if something doesn't go right, things aren't always going to go right. I can blame myself, but no one else has to know. It's, I can just kind of keep that to myself. So for me personally, just the confidence of getting out there has been really, really cool to see that in myself. The kindness around the world has been the most amazing thing I've gotten out of this. And I was really able to start seeing that the kindness I really wanted, that I didn't think existed in my own backyard, is here. And so I have hundreds, thousands of stories of people around the world who have helped me and done amazing things. And when I got back to the United States, I started seeing that it was here too. And I had this kind of mindset that, oh, it doesn't exist in this culture. And I realized that, kind of to what we talked about earlier, the kindness exists in everyone, and the majority of people are really, really good. I get asked a lot, have you been mugged or hurt? Have you ever been felt like you were in an unsafe place? And knock on wood, maybe that's still coming, but I haven't. And I think that's a real indicator of humanity. And at the core, we're all really, really good people.
So for you, like what message do you hope to convey to people by this life of travel for you?
I want, if I can get one person in this world who says, I am too afraid to travel, or I can't travel because of X condition, X physical condition, or X thing in my life, if that person that's listening to this now says, okay, I'm going to do it, and I am scared out of my mind, don't think I wasn't scared. I was scared out of my mind. But I would love to hear people, and I hear it occasionally. I'm sure more people are impacted than what I hear, but I want people to go and fight through that fear and do it, because you're going to have these moments where you're on a sand dune in Namibia thinking, oh my God, I can do anything, even though you're crawling. And it's really, really, it's a feeling that I think we can try to mimic in other ways, but getting out there and seeing the world and experiencing it, especially when you think you can't, is just such a rewarding feeling.
Wow. Well, I feel like your story is great for people with disabilities, but also seeing your stories and your reels and everything inspires me to just keep wanting to go explore and be like, not get so safe. It's easy to do safe travel, and especially like with my husband use a wheelchair, sometimes safe travel it's easy. Barcelona is easy.
For sure.
But I'm like, but you don't get to see Nambia,
Yeah.
or you don't get
Yeah.
to see, South Africa when it's only safe. And I think with challenging yourself, there comes so much growth. And so many people I talk to that use wheelchairs and they push themselves to travel, not quite as much as you, but a lot. They say that it's just made their life so much richer.
Yes.
And that's where I think that your life is so vast and so rich, and this thing that you want for other people, just a dose of that, because it's going to then make them crave it more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Your piece about feeling safe or staying in your comfort zone is so true. And Every time I come back, from a trip, I think, okay, when is the next one? When is the next one? And then I get back into my routine and everything's safe and comfortable. I know the language, I know the culture, I know the rules. And time goes by, and then it is time for the next trip. And I'm a little bit nervous. I have that anxiety of, is this safe? What if this happens? What if this happens? And so I think for the listeners, it's important to know that those feelings are normal and everyone has them. I have them, and I've been to 129 countries, and I still have them every time. And I wish they weren't there, but at the same time, I know that I can fight through them, and everyone else can too.
Do you know how many countries there are in the world?
195.
So is that a goal, or is it just like, I'm just going to keep going and see how it goes?
It is a goal. So yes, it is absolutely a goal. I am trying very hard to enjoy the process of that goal and not just to check mark that goal. It's a lifetime goal. And I am realistic that there are some places in the world that are very unsafe, and I might not be able to get to them. So I'm shooting for the stars, and I hope I get there. And I've got a lifetime ahead of me. So we'll see.
Absolutely. Wow. Um, so a couple final questions. So how do you stay motivated to continue traveling? Like a lot of people be like, man, I'd just be tired. Like, is it something that you like, okay, I'm gonna dig deep to go on another trip, or is it just intrinsic in you that you love adventure?
A little bit of both. I Every time I get to a new place, I have this feeling of, this is exactly where I need to be. This is exactly what I need to be doing right now. And it just feels like my place. People talk about their happy place. Like my
Yeah.
mom loves her backyard. She has a garden, and she's like, that's just my happy place. And I recognize that my happy place cannot be in the Namibia desert forever. I can't, I guess I could move there, but that doesn't, I can't perpetually have that. But I have those moments, and I try very hard when those moments happen to say, remember this, ingrain this in your brain, because you're going to get back and you're going to be tired and you're not going to want to do it again. And you have to remember that positive moment. So I hang on to those, and it's what keeps me going. And I know almost every single time I've traveled, I've gotten there and said, this is what I need to be doing. And it just feels so good.
Wow. I love it. So exciting to follow you, and I can't wait to continue. So final little popcorn Q&A. Okay, so I'm just gonna rapid fire a little bit. What's your favorite snack that's go to for a long flight?
Nuts, like almonds,
Mountain or
peanuts. Yeah.
okay, mountain or beach?
Love the beach.
Language you want to learn?
Italian.
Most exotic beach you visited?
This isn't really a beach, but it's a sandbar. It's kind of a beach in the Maldives. I will just say all of the beaches in the Maldives.
Last great read?
Ooh, I read a book called Every Country by an Italian man who had visited all of the countries. I just finished reading it a few weeks ago. Fantastic. If you love kind of the science or the history and the stories of people who have traveled to every country.
Love it. Must travel item besides your passport?
Cell phone.
Favorite music?
Depends on the day. Today I'm going to say Shakira.
Love it. Last movie you watched on an airplane?
Barbie. I know.
I saw it twice. And finally, next place you're going to visit?
I'm going to Costa Rica. My life partner is from Costa Rica, so we're going in August for a few weeks to see some family.
Oh, fabulous. Well, thank you so much for sharing your day with us. Your life is so interesting, and the risks you take make your life richer, but make our lives richer too, because it just challenges us and encourages us to keep exploring. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me and giving me this chance to share my story. And I hope everyone gets out there and sees the world.
Absolutely. For all you out there, tune in next time at Travel Talk with Joy for another amazing guest with a story that you don't want to miss. Have a great day.